Two boys, one toy car, a mother on the edge of death. They had only one hope, and sold the thing they loved most to save her. But what they didn't know was that this simple act would cross paths with a powerful, lonely man and forever change the lives of all four. Get ready for a true story that will break your heart and stitch it back together with love. The ending will leave you speechless. Now, take a deep breath, because the story is about to begin.
The autumn wind swept through Central Park, carrying dried leaves past the worn bench where twin boys sat quietly. And Noah Carter, identical down to the freckles scattered across their noses, huddled together against the morning chill. Between them rested a shiny red toy car, weathered at the edges but still gleaming where the sun caught its surface. "Someone's got to want it," Ethan whispered, his small hands nervously turning the toy. "It's the coolest car ever." Noah nodded, swallowing hard as he scanned the passing crowd. His stomach rumbled, but he ignored it. They hadn't eaten since yesterday's meager breakfast, but food wasn't the priority now, not with their mother lying pale and weak in their tiny apartment. Ethan tightened his scarf, frayed at the ends, around his neck. The bench beneath them was cold and unforgiving. He glanced at his brother and tried to smile, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Let's try over there," Noah suggested, pointing toward the busier path where business people hurried to work with coffee cups and cell phones in hand. The twins positioned themselves strategically, summoning courage beyond their 10 years. Their identical blue eyes, serious and determined, watched each passerby with desperate hope. They stood close together, drawing strength from each other, their hands clutching the little car like it was the last piece of magic they had. "Excuse me, sir," Ethan called to a man in an expensive suit. "Would you like to buy our car? It's really special." The man walked past without acknowledging them. This pattern repeated throughout the morning, people rushing by, some offering pitying glances, others pretending not to see them at all. One woman slowed down, looked at them with sorrow, and then kept walking, guilt etched in her furrowed brow. "We need to try harder," Noah said finally, his voice breaking. "Mom needs the medicine today." "She was shivering this morning," Ethan murmured, the memory of their mother's labored breathing tightening his chest. Even the blankets didn't help. Across the park, a tall figure emerged from a sleek black car. James J.R. Callahan adjusted his custom-tailored jacket, nodding curtly as his driver confirmed his afternoon meeting schedule. At 45, Callahan had built Callahan Energy into a sprawling oil empire rooted in West Texas. His name was known in boardrooms around the globe, associated with power, strategy, and ruthless precision. He was a man of numbers and forecasts, not feelings. "I'll walk through the park," he told his driver. "Meet me on the east side in 15 minutes. Callahan moved with purpose, his polished boots crunching fallen leaves as he reviewed quarterly projections in his head. He barely registered the morning crowd, joggers, dog walkers, and tourists, until a small voice pierced his thoughts. "Sir, would you buy our car, please?" His stride faltered. Something in that voice, earnest, pleading, made him stop. He turned to see two boys looking up at him, identical faces flushed with cold and anxiety. One of them extended a toy car with both hands, as if presenting something sacred. "We're selling it," the boy said. "It's really fast. The doors open and the wheels still turn." Callahan stared at them, an unfamiliar pressure building in his chest. The way they cradled the toy, as if parting with it was painful, tugged at something buried deep inside him. The last time he had seen a toy so carefully guarded, it had been in the hands of his own son. "How much?" he asked, surprised by the sound of his own voice. The twins glanced at each other. "Whatever you can pay," Ethan answered. "We just need the money for our mom. She's really sick." Callahan looked at the toy again, its chipped paint, worn wheels, and the care clearly taken to keep it clean. It had been loved, the kind of love money couldn't buy. He reached into his wallet and pulled out several large bills. "Here," he said, offering the money. "Will this help?" Their eyes widened at the sight of the cash. Ethan slowly placed the toy car in Callahan's palm, his fingers hesitant to let go. "Thank you, sir," Noah said, his voice trembling. "This will help our mom a lot." Callahan nodded, pocketing the car as he watched the boys hurry away, clutching the money like treasure. He stood motionless for a moment, the weight of the toy unexpectedly heavy in his coat. He should have kept walking, moved on with his day. But something held him there. A flash of memory struck him, his late son laughing as he raced a toy truck across the marble floors of their old ranch house. That sound, long buried beneath layers of silence and time, echoed in his mind. He turned to his driver, who waited nearby. "Follow them," he said. "I want to see where they live." The car crept behind the boys at a discreet distance. Callahan studied the toy resting in his hand. Years had passed since anything had pierced the armor of his routine, but now something unfamiliar stirred. It wasn't nostalgia. It was ache. The boys entered a rundown apartment building on a quiet side street. Callahan stepped out and followed them in, climbing a narrow stairwell that reeked of mildew and fatigue. On the fourth floor, he heard muffled voices and approached a door with chipped paint and a broken peephole. It opened a crack, revealing Ethan's wary face. His eyes widened. "It's him!" he called over his shoulder. The door opened fully. Noah stood beside his brother, both uncertain. Behind them, Callahan caught a glimpse of a tiny, dim apartment and the still form of a woman lying on a mattress on the floor. "May I come in?" he asked, his voice unusually soft. They hesitated, then stepped aside. The room was bare but clean. No decorations, no warmth, only necessity. The woman on the mattress, Grace Carter, was pale, her breathing shallow. The resemblance to the twins was immediate and heartbreaking. "How long has she been like this?" he asked quietly. "A few weeks," Ethan replied. "She just keeps getting worse." Callahan approached and gently touched her forehead. She was burning with fever. "She needs a hospital," he said, already reaching for his phone. "We don't have any money," Noah murmured. "We were going to get soup later if we could sell the car." Callahan looked again at the toy car in his pocket, then at the two boys standing helplessly by. "I'll take care of it," he said. The boys exchanged a glance. "How will we ever pay you back?" Ethan asked. Callahan's voice softened. "You already did. You sold me something important. Now let me help." Without another word, he lifted Grace into his arms. She murmured incoherently but didn't resist. The boys hurried behind him, eyes wide with fear and hope. "Where are we going?" Noah asked. "To people who can help her," Callahan said, dialing his private physician as they descended the stairs. As his sleek black car pulled away from the curb, Callahan glanced at the two boys clutching each other's hands in the back seat, and at their mother, unconscious beside him. For years he had guarded his heart like a vault, but now something had broken through, something real. And for the first time in a long time, James Callahan didn't look away. The new routine inside the mansion unfolded like a quiet storm, reshaping everything James Callahan had built his life around. For Ethan and Noah, the transition was a plunge into wonder. They explored cautiously at first, wide-eyed and whispering in awe, as they wandered through towering hallways adorned with paintings, chandeliers glinting above them like stars suspended in gold. Their bedroom alone was larger than their entire old apartment, 2 plush beds with velvet covers, windows that reached to the ceiling, and shelves already stacked with books, puzzles, and toys. They ran their hands over everything as if to confirm it was real. The soft carpet muffled their footsteps as they moved from room to room, each one revealing something more extravagant than the last. Downstairs, Mrs. Winters guided them gently, pointing out what was allowed and what was not, though even she found it difficult to enforce strict rules when faced with their honest amazement and innocent questions. The boys peeked into Callahan's study more than once, though they never entered. There was an unspoken line they didn't dare cross. James Callahan kept a distance, at least in the beginning. He justified his detachment by retreating into routine emails, calls, briefings with his team, but his attention wavered. He found himself lingering in doorways, watching the twins draw at the breakfast table or build forts out of couch cushions. More than once, he forgot to respond to important emails as he listened to their laughter echoing through the halls. One afternoon, he caught a glimpse of them racing toy cars across the marble floors. One of the cars was red, old, familiar. The one they had sold him. Callahan froze. The sight of it, the way it flew across the floor, The way the boys cheered unlocked something inside him. That night, Callahan stood in front of the door at the end of the west wing. It remained locked. Behind it was Thomas's room, untouched, preserved. His wife's touch lingered in the folded blankets, the astronaut mobile above the bed, the rows of storybooks still on the shelf. He hadn't entered in 5 years. The boys had asked once. "What's in there?" Ethan said, looking up at him. Callahan had answered with practiced neutrality. "That room stays closed." But now, as he turned the small red car in his hand, he found himself questioning that decision. Could something once so broken begin to heal? The next morning, over breakfast, Callahan watched as Ethan explained the rules of a card game to Noah with exaggerated seriousness. He poured himself coffee but didn't drink it. Instead, he said quietly, "You boys like chess?" Their heads turned. "I found a board in the closet," Noah said, "but we don't know how to play." "I could teach you," Callahan offered. The words sounded foreign coming from his mouth, but also natural, as if they'd been waiting. Ethan grinned. "Can we play today?" "After lunch," Callahan said. The first game was slow, clumsy. The boys argued over the names of the pieces, laughed when they forgot the rules, and celebrated every move. Callahan explained strategies, talked about control of the center, the importance of protecting the king. He caught himself smiling. That night, he sat alone in his office with the red car on his desk. He turned it over in his fingers like a talisman. In another life, his son had clutched a car just like this. He could almost hear the voice, high and excited. "Look, Daddy, it can do wheelies." The door to Thomas's room remained locked. But for the first time in years, James Callahan was no longer sure he wanted it that way. Over the following days, James Callahan found himself spending more and more time with the twins, not out of obligation, but out of something gentler, quieter. The chess games became a routine. He taught them strategy and patience, but they taught him how to laugh again. They teased each other mercilessly and celebrated even the smallest victories like they were world championships. Afternoons became a blend of card games, board games, and stories. Ethan would dramatically read adventure books out loud, while Noah added exaggerated sound effects. Callahan often watched from the armchair, pretending to read, but listening with something that felt dangerously close to contentment. One evening, without realizing it, he corrected the boys' pronunciation of a word from the couch. They looked up, surprised, and grinned. "Are you listening to us?" Noah asked, mock suspicious. Callahan hesitated, then said, "You missed a line." The boys burst into laughter. It was during one of those moments when the boys fell asleep mid-story on the library couch that Grace Carter, now stronger and finally well enough to walk longer distances, returned to the house from her latest checkup. She walked quietly into the room and froze at the sight. The twins curled up like kittens, the book open on Ethan's chest, and Callahan sitting in a chair across from them, fast asleep, his hand still resting on a cup of tea gone cold. The scene didn't look staged or temporary. It looked like a family. The next morning, over breakfast, Grace noticed something else. The way the boys spoke about Callahan had changed. "Mr. Callahan said we could build a rocket from boxes. He's going to show us how to use the telescope." Their eyes shone. She looked at Callahan carefully. He listened to the boys with full attention, corrected their posture when they slouched, and even chuckled when Noah spilled juice and tried to clean it before anyone noticed. This was not the cold, closed man she had first met. Later that day, as Grace helped Mrs. Winters with dinner, she asked, "Was he always like this?" The housekeeper shook her head. "Number he used to be. Efficient, polite. But this?" She glanced toward the laughter from the hallway. "This is new." That night, Grace found Callahan in the study, holding the red toy car. The room was dim, shadows playing on the walls. "I think they've claimed you," she said gently. Callahan looked up. "They're good boys." "They are. And they care about you." He didn't answer immediately. Then, quietly, "My wife's name was Sarah. Our son was Thomas." Grace sat down across from him. "They died in a car accident. I was driving." The words left his mouth slowly, heavily. "A truck ran a red light. I survived. They didn't." "I'm sorry," she said softly. I closed everything after that. The room, my heart, my life became business, routine. She didn't press, just sat there, listening. I didn't expect this, he said after a while, nodding toward the hallway. Any of it. Grace offered a small, sad smile. Neither did I. In the days that followed, Grace spent more time walking through the garden, thinking. She had started looking for a modest apartment nearby. Her treatment was nearly over. The idea of overstaying her welcome weighed on her, even though no one had said a word. One afternoon, while folding laundry, she overheard the boys talking. "What if we have to leave?" Ethan whispered. "We can't," Noah said. "Mr. Callahan needs us." Grace felt her chest tighten. That evening, she sat on the porch as the sun dipped below the horizon. Callahan joined her, holding 2 mugs of tea. "You've changed," she said, watching him. "So have you," he replied. Grace hesitated. "The boys, they've grown attached." "So have I." She turned to him. "James, I've been looking at apartments. It's time we start preparing to go." He looked away, staring into the fading light. "I know," he said quietly. But the truth in his eyes said something else entirely. James Callahan stood once again before the door at the end of the West Wing. This time, the red toy car was not in his pocket, it was in his hand. The house was quiet, the twins in the garden with Mrs. Winters, Grace reading by the fire. It had been years since he'd even touched the key, much less dared to use it. He slid the key into the lock. It turned with a soft click. The door opened with a reluctant groan, revealing the room exactly as it had been the day his world shattered. Blue walls with tiny planets, a rocket-shaped nightlight on the dresser. Books lined up with precision no child could ever maintain. Grace must have tidied them in the early weeks before she, too, stopped coming in here. Callahan stepped inside. The air was still. The light from the hallway stretched long across the carpet, illuminating a photo on the nightstand. Thomas, grinning between him and Sarah on a beach. Their last vacation. He sat on the edge of the bed, car still in hand, unsure what he was waiting for. A knock broke the silence. It was Lucas. "I saw the door was open," the boy said, hesitating. Callahan nodded slowly. "You can come in." Lucas stepped carefully into the room, his eyes wide, his voice soft. "This was your son's room." "Yes, Thomas." Lucas looked at the photo. "He looks like us." Callahan almost smiled. He was 5. He liked dinosaurs and spaceships. He couldn't sit still. This was his favorite car. Lucas glanced at the one in Callahan's hand. "The red one?" Callahan nodded. "He used to race it across the kitchen floor, just like you and your brother." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Lucas asked, "Is that why you helped us?" Callahan exhaled. "Maybe. At first. But it became something else." Lucas looked up at him. "Mom says people come into your life when your heart is ready again, even if you don't know it yet." Callahan stared at the boy. "She's wise." Lucas gently reached for the photo frame. "He looks happy." He was. When Lucas left, Callahan remained in the room, the weight of years loosening from his chest. The silence wasn't oppressive anymore, it was peaceful, a place of memory, not pain. That night, after the boys had gone to bed, Grace found Callahan standing in the doorway of Thomas's room. "I opened it," he said. She stepped beside him. "How did it feel?" "Like breathing for the first time in a very long time." They went inside together. Grace walked slowly, taking in the details. The books, the drawings on the wall, the tiny shoes near the closet. "He loved bedtime stories," Callahan said. "He always wanted 2. One funny, one about space." Grace looked at him, eyes gentle. "You don't have to do this alone." "I thought I was supposed to," he admitted. "That somehow if I kept the grief locked away, I could control it. That I didn't deserve anything else." She reached out and took his hand. "We've all lost something," she said. "But that doesn't mean we have to stop living." Callahan turned to her fully, his eyes clear for the first time in years. "I don't want to go back to the way things were." "Neither do I." They stood there together in the quiet, surrounded by memories but no longer defined by them. He squeezed her hand gently. "I don't know what this is yet," he said, "but I know I don't want it to end." Grace didn't answer immediately, but the way her hand stayed in his said everything he needed to hear. A few days after opening the door to his past, James Callahan sat in his office, staring at a small velvet box resting on the polished desk. Inside, nestled in dark satin, was his grandmother's engagement ring, an antique emerald framed by delicate diamonds. He hadn't touched it in years. He'd never thought he would. Lucas appeared at the door. "Mom says lunch is ready." Callahan nodded. "Thank you, Lucas." The boy lingered. "You look nervous." Callahan managed a smile. "I'm thinking about asking your mother something very important." Lucas's eyes widened. "Like, really important?" "Very." He didn't say more, but as Lucas turned to leave, he added, "She loves you, you know." Callahan watched him go, heart pounding. That evening, after dinner, he asked Grace to join him on the terrace. The sky was painted in shades of orange and lavender, and the garden lights had just begun to flicker on. She wore a simple sweater, her hair pulled back, looking more radiant than ever in the fading light. "I've been thinking," Callahan said, voice quiet, "about how you and the boys changed this house. Changed me." Grace smiled, cautious but warm. "It wasn't our intention." "I know. But it happened." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the ring box, opening it slowly. "I never thought I'd feel this way again. I never thought I'd want to. But the truth is, I don't want a life that doesn't have you and the boys in it." He held the ring toward her, his voice steady. "Grace Carter, will you marry me? Will you stay not as guests, not out of gratitude, but as a family?" Tears welled in her eyes. She nodded, speechless at first. Then she whispered, "Yes." From the shadows of the hallway, two heads peeked out, Ethan and Noah, who had clearly been eavesdropping. "Does that mean you're gonna be our dad?" Ethan asked boldly. Callahan stood, extending his arms. "Only if you want me to be." The boys rushed forward, wrapping him in a tight hug. "Can we call you Dad now?" Noah asked. He swallowed hard. "I'd be honored." From that moment, something shifted permanently. Breakfasts became louder. Evenings became longer. The house, once filled with silence, now echoed with stories, music, and life. They made new memories, not to replace the old but to build alongside them. Sunlight streamed through the canopy of trees as guests gathered in the garden of the Callahan estate. White chairs lined the flower-lined aisle, and a soft breeze carried the scent of jasmine and spring roses. Ethan and Noah, dressed in matching suits, walked proudly down the aisle, each carrying a velvet cushion with a ring nestled atop it. They took their places with serious faces, trying not to grin. Grace stood beneath a simple floral archway, radiant in a soft ivory gown. James stood opposite her, dressed in a dark suit, his hand shaking slightly as he reached for hers. "I never thought I'd have this again," he whispered. "You never lost it," she replied. "It was just waiting." As the officiant spoke, their hands remained tightly clasped. When it came time to exchange vows, James turned to the twins. "I didn't just fall in love with your mother," he said, voice thick with emotion. "I fell in love with this family, and I promise to protect, guide, and love you as your father, if you'll have me." Ethan nodded first. "We already do." Laughter rippled through the crowd as the boys handed over the rings. When the ceremony ended, the family walked down the aisle together, hand in hand, side by side. That night, under the soft glow of garden lights, music played, and laughter echoed through the estate once again. Mrs. Winters danced with the gardener. Lucas challenged guests to chess. Ethan snuck cake twice. In the quiet moments between songs, James Callahan caught himself looking around, not to check, not to guard, but to simply take it all in. For the first time in years, his house was a home, and his heart was full.
And so, another story comes to an end. If it spoke to you, if it stirred a memory or touched your heart, then it was worth telling. Here at True Feels, every story is a reminder that even in pain, life still holds beauty, kindness, and hope. Before you go, leave your mark. Tell us in the comments what moved you most. Leave a like, it tells us this work matters. And if you haven't already, subscribe and join our family. Because here, you never feel alone. Until the next story, may your heart always stay open to feel